So today I want to give you an update on the latest between the war with Israel and Iran. And so the latest is that Israel has attacked one of the largest gas fields in the world in Iran. And you can see it's up in flames here. So I have an interesting Twitter post to run past you. So the South Pars gas field, the single largest natural gas reserve on the planet, was struck by Israeli strikes. The fire is now spread to Qatar's largest LNG plant, the same Qatar that just gave Trump a £400 million Boeing jet. Silly dumb Arabs. So, South Pars, which is an oil field in Iran, is bombed, the world's largest in the world. Iran has taken several phases of South Pars offline, so not all of it is destroyed, but there's a lot of extensive damage here. Iran says it will take decisive action and it will hit 9 countries, which we'll run through. So just to give you a bit of context about why it's so important to understand that you hitting those gas fields, that basically changes the nature of this war. So just to give you a bit of history, the US spent 20 years in Afghanistan and never once hit the country's energy grid. Israel done that in one night in this Iran war. The other thing is, I'm sorry guys, really bad news if you live in Europe. 20% of LNG, which is liquefied natural gas, comes from Qatar. That supply's at risk, obviously. So if you live in Europe, you are in a terrible position because you're sanctioning cheap Russian oil. So you're not getting the cheap Russian oil and you're not getting the cheap Gulf oil. So you really only have the US. You're going to have to beg them to supply you with cheap oil. Good luck with that, Europe. So, as you can see there, it's in flames. So basically what Iran is saying is that Iran's response won't be a press conference. It'll be the biggest energy retaliation the world has ever seen. And so I think that's the first thing that I wanted to run through with you guys. The other thing which is interesting, and I guess the purpose of this video is to show you how the US is not only losing control of this war, but they're actually losing this war. So Trump has publicly constrained Israel on a specific and critical target. The US and Israel unified front has a documented crack in it, which gives Iran pragmatist faction something to work with. The argument is that the US and Israel are not operating identically, and therefore a deal with the US does not require accepting everything Israel wants. So just to take a step back, the goal of Israel is to destroy the nation state of Iran. Now, the US's goal is not the same. The result might be the same, but their purpose is to degrade Iran's ability to fire missiles. They're not there to necessarily destroy the country. And Trump has drawn a line that has the effect of stabilizing the conflict's geography. The South Pars is now explicitly under US protection from further Israeli strikes. Qatar's LNG is now explicitly under US protection from Iranian strikes. And basically what happened is Trump said Israel, out of anger for what has taken place in the Middle East, has violently lashed out at a major facility known as South Pars. A relatively small section of the whole has been hit. The United States knew nothing about this particular attack. That's a lie. And the country of Qatar was no way, shape or form involved, nor did they have any idea that it was going to happen. I mean, you must be pretty stupid if you're the Qataris and you think that Iran wasn't going to do that. Trump says no more attacks will be made by Israel pertaining to this extremely important and valuable South Pars field unless Iran unwisely decides to attack a very innocent, in this case, Qatar. So you can see here, basically, Qatar is begging Israel on social media, oh, please, please don't attack the oil fields. The prices will rise. And you know what Israel's going to do. They're just going to completely ignore what my boy Trump said on social media. But let's see how that plays out over the next course of next couple of days and weeks. So, who is actually winning this war? So I got another juicy post for you on X. So let's take a step back. The US has spent about £14 billion in 18 days. That involves pure fighting, and every NATO ally has said that we don't want to basically be involved in your stupid war. Trump asked them for help, so you can see that he's already desperate. It's only been, 3-4 weeks. You have this complete joke of a battleship called the USS Ford, which retreated after a fire injured 200 sailors. I'm pretty sure that was probably a strike by Iran, but obviously the US wants to save face and they don't want to admit that. The CIA admits that Iran is still building missiles that can hit the US. Well, I don't think that those missiles can reach the US, but they can certainly reach Israel. The munition stockpiles are so depleted that they're pulling from strategic reserves. And so if you don't know, what's happening is those missile defense, those missiles that attack the other missiles that Iran sent, that missile battery is being moved from Japan and I think it's South Korea to the US. So you can see they're already running out of the firepower and the stockpile. Iran is getting, let's be honest, right? Militarily, there is no hope in hell for Iran to win the war against US. Not militarily, but strategically, it has already defeated the US. It has been bombed to hell, and it still stands. They even recently took out one of the top 2 Iranian leaders. I forgot their name. They have these weird names, and guess what? You take out the top leaders, and Iran is still fighting back. The Strait of Hormuz, Iran has hit 15 ships. There's basically the US don't even know if Iran can actually enrich the uranium, because obviously now they're not going to allow the UN weapon inspectors to come into the country. So now you're completely in the dark, and all Iran has to do is one thing, is just to survive. Israel, well, let's look at their perspective. So they've just hit the largest gas field. They're continuing to bomb Iran. Not Iran. They're continuing to bomb Lebanon to hell, and they'll plan to turn that into the next Gaza. They're fighting wars on 3 fronts, which is Iran, Lebanon, and Al-Gaza. It means that these people are completely overextended, and I'm pretty sure they called up their reserves. So you have one country which is surviving, which is Iran, and the other country which is militarily overextended. And then you have the Prime Minister of Russia. They say that this is the worst energy crisis in 40 years. They're preparing to send military convoys for merchant ships and possibly feeding Iran intelligence. I can bet a lot of money to say that Russia is definitely providing Iran with intelligence. And the reason is very simple. When the Ukraine and Russia were in the war, the US was providing Ukraine with intelligence. So I call this a bit of payback. And so all Russia has to do is just shut the hell up, help Iran, behind the scenes and just keep quiet and they win. What about China? China, as my boy Trump likes to say. So obviously, the price of them buying the oil has gone up to 150 barrels for Gulf oil, while the US only pays 110. Iran's blockade is crushing China's own energy supply, but they are buying every dip and stockpiling while others panic, playing the long game while the West burns cash. Bottom line, short-term pain, long-term gain. So this is true where China does get a lot of its oil from the Persian Gulf, right? But if you think about it, what's actually happening is the US is exhausting all their most powerful military weapons. And you have to understand it takes years or at least a couple of months to manufacture those weapons. And, they're trying their best to literally level parts of Iran. And, there's another massive cost in terms of the cost of carrying out this war. And look, just think about it, how far Iran is, hundreds of thousands of miles away from the US. How expensive is it to just fly one plane over Iran, bomb it, and then return back? Just that flight alone. I mean, you can bet money to say that will cost millions of pounds. So although China is feeling it in the short term with higher energy prices, I believe that is offset to a greater extent in terms of the cost of the war to the West and in particular US. And how does it impact Qatar? Well, Qatar is now condemning the strike as dangerous and irresponsible. Yeah, listen, faggot Qatar, you've been condemning Israel for killing babies for Gaza for about 2 years. Your condemnation won't mean nothing, and people will just ignore you. They're clearly trapped in this. And so we could talk about the UAE. They've intercepted 10 ballistic missiles and 45 drones. I think this was reported yesterday. In total, 314 ballistic missiles, over 1,600 drones since the start of the war. Let me tell you this. When the UAE runs out of interceptor missiles, if you're the US, who are you going to supply those missiles to? Israel or the UAE? I mean, Arabs are so foolish if they think that the US is going to protect them. This is now the price that they're going to pay. The price will be such a heavy one. And separately, if you want me to make a video about the hidden genocide in Sudan carried out by the UAE, let me know in the comments and I can make a video about that. And then in Saudi Arabia, explosions heard in Riyadh, sirens in the capital. The war has certainly arrived at their doorstep. This is just the beginning for Saudi. And they'll have I mean, look, think about it. They have a choice. They have a choice to go to war with Iran. And towards the end of the video, I'm going to explain why that would be the dumbest move for Saudi Arabia. Or they have now a chance to move into Iran's sphere of influence right now, because they will be the dominant player after everything is said and done. Mark my words. Got another post here. If you are surprised that Iran is hitting Gulf nations, then you simply don't understand Iran's mentality. Iran gave up on Islamic solidarity a long time ago. They concluded from the first Gulf War that Muslim nations would not help. In fact, they would collaborate to get Iran destroyed. So now let me just take you back on memory lane. So in the 1990s, there was a war between Iraq and Iran. And without going into the details, who do you think America helped in that war? Well, they gave chemical weapons to Iraq against Iran. And, it was a war that lasted about 10 years, 1 million people died, and it basically ended in a stalemate. But you know what's funny? Do you know that it is those same chemical weapons that the West gave to Saddam that he used against the Kurds in Iraq, which was actually one of the pretexts of war against Iraq in the first place in 2003? It's interesting, isn't it, how things move in full circle? So from Iranian point of view, the Muslim regimes in the region are in bed with the US, and they clearly have all the military bases because of that. And ultimately, Iran faces an existential war, and all gloves are off. And they have decided to hurt the Gulf nations. Obviously, this is a high-risk strategy. It's a high gamble. But when your back is against the wall, then Iran has now decided to dismantle the US and Israel's security, both from a financial and political angle. So not necessarily from a military perspective, because the Iranian leaders are still dropping like flies. And as far as I know, Benjamin Netanyahu is still alive. But they're winning economically and politically. This post sort of summarizes some of the hits that Iran is making across the Middle East, where they've hit Qatar oil fields, they've hit the Al Udeid air base in Qatar, they've hit a few oil refineries in Saudi. So, you know what, another interesting angle, I don't think many people have covered this, but Japan and South Korea are heavily reliant on energy exports. So Japan is reliant on 97% of its energy from importing, particularly from Qatar. And South Korea is energy dependent by up to 85%. So I wonder what these countries are going to do as this war continues, and as they start to struggle to obtain the energy that they need to run their modern economy. It will be very interesting to see how that plays out. So yeah, this is another post that talks about Iran's strategy, which is purely economic, which is why they've closed the Strait of Hormuz. So this is an interesting take. So Iran needs its gas revenue for the post-war reconstruction it's counting on. South Pars is Iran's economic future, the asset that makes sanction relief and BRICS integration worth pursuing. Hitting it tells Iran that the longer this war runs, the less there is to rebuild with. Trump opposed striking oil fields because of the price impact and the optics of burning refineries, but gas was less of a concern. They chose to target that hurts Iran's future revenue without spiking oil prices. Well, obviously that's just going to spike gas prices. So in other words, both Iran and Israel now, they're both using energy infrastructure as a bargaining chip as they bomb each other, which is interesting. Now, recent news has also come out about the US national head of counterterrorism. His name is Joe Kent. And he said, after much reflection, I have decided to resign from my position as the director of National Counterterrorism Center, effective today. This is a couple of days ago. I cannot, in good conscience, support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to the pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. So, I mean, this guy is telling you, I mean, if you're a US citizen, this guy is basically telling you that Israel controls our government and controls our foreign policy, and that we are not a free nation. It's very important if you're in the US or if you're a US citizen to understand this. You know, you have one of the most senior leaders in your, in your government saying this. And the ironic thing is he's part of the counterterrorism department. He's saying it, which is very interesting. So before I touch upon this video, which explains why Saudi should not go to war with Iran, there's this Chinese guy on YouTube. He's very popular. His name is Professor Jiang. And he says it best. He says, there will be no ceasefire. There will be no truce there will be no peace deal. Not because both sides are stubborn, because this war is not about oil, not about nuclear weapons, not about territory. America and Iran are fighting for the nature of reality itself. One side wins and one side disappears. There is no middle ground. So he comes at it from a different angle, and I also tend to agree that this war, it's not going to make logical sense if you just look at it from an economic and political perspective. A part of it can be addressed by it, but another part of it is the religious angle, because you have Christian and Jewish extremists in the Israeli government and the US government, and conversely you also have Muslim extremists in operating in the Iranian government, and ultimately one side is going to disappear, and this is why I believe this war will go on for a very long time. And lastly, I just want to play this video which will summarize why Iran won't be defeated anytime soon.
That it is a gigantic task to launch a ground invasion in Iran? Let's analyze. Iran's geography is a natural fortress. Encircled by towering mountain ranges, it naturally repels invaders. From the west, the Zagros Mountains run 1,600 kilometers along Iraq, with peaks over...
Peace.